So you're joining me here today at the absolute stunning Redhill Fishery. We're up on Penny's Lake and I've recently fished a Fish South qualifier on here, and it really opened my mind just how good pellets can be whilst fishing shallow. So in the match itself, I started the first half of the match fishing with pellets and it was absolutely brilliant. I caught some big carp, I've caught some big F1s. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to actually go and take you to the exact same peg that I fished on the Fish South qualifier. I'm going to take you through my rigs, I'm going to take you through what pellets I use whilst feeding, what pellets I use on the hook, just how accurate you can feed them and just how effective they can be. So we're at the peg. This is actually the peg I drew in the Fish South qualifier here about 3 weeks ago, when fishing pellets early on in the match was absolutely brilliant. I just feel with this style of fishing, lots of people get drawn straight into fishing with casters, feeding lots of bait, big pouching casters. But one thing I've learned definitely this year is that there's definitely room for fishing with pellets. In this lake last year, it's actually been stocked with quite a few eyed, and I felt like on that last qualifier, if I would have started with casters the first probably 90 minutes to 2 hours of the match, it wouldn't have been great. I just feel like when you get those eyed in your peg, that they do really sort of interrupt the F1s when they're feeding. And sometimes you put your rig in and they actually get to your hook bait before the F1s can. So fishing with pellets early on that day was absolutely brilliant. I think I went out and after about 90 minutes, I think I was up to about £60 just on pellets, just thinking like 6 and 8 pellets, fishing overshotted. It does seem that fishing overshotted on venues like this, these big open water venues, that does seem to be the method. But fishing with pellets that day was absolutely brilliant. And after that day, when I came away, I noticed a few other things about fishing with pellets and how good they can be and why they can be good. Just to start off with, just how accurate you can feed them. You can feed them so accurate compared to casters, because the pellets themselves are so uniform in size that when you use the right catapults and you get the conditions right, they can just go in like an area of like a bin lid. And that's so important when you're fishing like this. So if you do get the conditions wrong, where you get the wind in your face, that's one other circumstance where pellets can be absolutely brilliant. The days where you're fishing with casters and they're going over too big of an area and spreading your fish in your peg, that's another circumstance fishing with pellets can be absolutely brilliant. So for me, there's two situations where fishing with pellets is really, really good. When you get other fish in your peg, i.e. eyed, skimmers, stuff like that, or the conditions don't seem right, you can't fire your casters accurately enough. But for me, when you are going to use pellets in this circumstances, it's important to use the right pellets. For all my bottom fishing, when I'm fishing short on the bottom, stuff like that, I do like to use the Sonubaits hard pellets, which sink a lot quicker than the thin perfect pellets and get to the bottom quickly and don't break down as quick. But for this style of fishing, I like to use the 4mm thin perfect feed pellets, just so they sink a little bit slower. There we go, there's another one. I just slowed down my flick then and just made a little bit less noise, and that seemed really good. But you can see just from that just how accurately you can feed your pellets. And that is so important. If you were going to say one thing, the most important thing about this style of fishing for me is that you feed your bait in an accurate area, which you can do absolutely perfect with pellets. But yeah, the 4mm fin feed perfect, that's what I would choose when you're doing this style of fishing. I know that's not going to sink as quick as the hard pellets, which is what you want. You want to bring the fish up into those upper layers and just try and keep them there. And also, the other great thing about fishing with pellets, what I did find that day, when I did catch on them, the fish that did really seem to be a great big stamp. There you go, another great big carp. But look at that, you don't need many of them, and that's what's so important about fishing with these pellets. If I felt like now, if I was fishing with casters, I'd be going out, I'd be hooking an odd hide, I'd maybe skimmers, stuff like that. And that day, when I started on pellets, it really gave me a good start because I wasn't frustrated early in the match. I felt like if I would have started on pellets, I might have gone out, got frustrated with it because I was hooking hide, hooking skimmers, and it might have brought me off that shallow line, which in the long run wouldn't have been the right thing to do. So I'll just talk you through my process a little bit. I've just baited up after catching one. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to put about 10 to 15 pellets in the pouch. I'm going to feed before I go out. You can see just how accurately they go in. And I'm just going to ship out. And I'm just going to go right on the far edge of where those pellets landed. I'm going to turn my rig over. And then I'm going to flick 5 times. Nice and controlled. So lower your pole, flick. 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 I'm going to do that 5 times, and then I'm going to pick my catapult up, and I'm just going to get into a nice rhythm where I'm just going to be firing pellets pretty constantly and flicking my pole and making a nice noise with the end of my pole. Today it's really flat calm, so I feel like I don't want to flick it really powerfully and make loads of noise, so I'm just going to do like a nice flick like that. So I'm still making plenty of noise, but it's not too much noise, if that makes sense. There we go, there's another one. But I think once you get into that process and you fire your pellets in nice and accurate, and you can see just from that I'm not getting any other fish. All the stamp of fish that I'm catching really are great stamp, and you're going to catch, I mean, like that rate there is going to be like 2. Oh, that one's just popped off. So I'll see if I can get you one more. But this is the time now when, if you get that that situation happen where you've caught 2 really quickly and then you lose one, I might start thinking about coming up a bit shallower. So I've got all my rigs set up today from 12, 16, 20, 24 and 28 inches. That's the rigs I set up when I do this. And that's the depth from the pole tip to the hook, not the float. Just going to get back into my rhythm. That didn't quite go in as nice, so I'll just do it. There we go, that's loads better. I'm going to go out, see if I can get you one more, and I'll just talk you through exactly how I set my rigs up, what I do with my shot, my hook lengths, and the floats, and elastics, everything. So I'm just gone out, I'm going to flick 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I'm going to start just getting in a nice rhythm with it. Just like 10 to 12 pellets in the pouch. And then just getting a nice rhythm with flicking. And then all you got to do once you get out to this point now is just concentrate on flicking the pole right and feeding really, really nice and accurate, and then also thinking about the depth that you're fishing at. So I lost one last chuck. What my initial thoughts would be was just to pop up a little bit shallower. So I'm actually fishing at 24 inches at the moment. So what I might do, if I don't get one within 3 or 4 minutes, I might just whip the pole in nice and quickly and swap to my 20-inch rig. Because I know on this lake, 20 to 28 inches normally is about the best depth at this stage in the day. And what happens, the later on in the day you go, the higher the fish come. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to keep flicking, keep fishing. There we go. So I'll just get that one in, and then I'll talk you through my rigs. So over like the last probably 6 months, I've sort of changed the way I do my rigs for my overshotting. So initially, when it was sort of invented, this style of fishing, it was initially invented just putting like a BB, a hook length and a piece of line. You couldn't get more simple. And then some anglers come into it, started using a float, started using a bulk. And I feel like as more and more people start doing this overshotting, the fish really do get wise up to it. So fishing with a bulk now for me is not quite as good as the way that I've been doing it, like probably the last like 6 months. And the way I do it is very, very simple. I mentioned earlier that I set all my rigs up from 12, 16, 20, 24 and 28 inches. And all I do, I use a matrix 0.1 dibber, and then I have a number 10 shot every 1.25 inches for the whole rig. So when I'm using my shorter rigs, i.e. 12 and 16 inch, I probably got about 5 to 6 shot on the line, every 1.25 inches up. But as my rigs get longer, as I go to my 20, my 24, my 28, I'll just have a shot every 1.25 inches the whole way up to the float. So on my deepest rigs, i.e. my 28s, I'll have like 12 number 10s on. Now having weight the whole way through the rig's really important for me, because when you flick it, I've actually dropped these rigs in a pond, and when you actually flick the rig, if you've got any space in the rig where there's not weight on the line, you do get slack. Now for me, an overshotted rig, the whole reason why it works is because everything's nice and tight and you hook the fish as soon as it sucks your bait in. So this is my 24-inch rig. So I've got a size 16 Matrix X5 hook, to just a medium latex band. Their bands are absolutely brilliant because I can use that on a caster or I can use that on a pellet. So when I'm starting on pellets like I am today, the band's perfect. And if I was to change to casters, I can still use the same band. And then I've got a 4-inch hook length of 0.14. My main line itself is 0.18. And then I've got a number 10 shot, like I said, every 1.25 inches the whole way up. So for this rig, I've got 10 number 10s on. And then a 0.1 matrix dibber, and then I've got a 3-inch gap between my float and my pole tip. Now this is really, really important because when I'm flicking my pole up, if I start seeing my float when I'm flicking, that means I'm lifting my pole too high. It's really important to be consistent with your flicking. If you're inconsistent when you flick the pole, when one chuck you flick it where you drop the pole 10 inches, and then one flick you drop it when it's 2 inches, it's very difficult to find out what rig is best because you're inconsistent. So having that 3 inches of line between the float and the pole tip is really important, because if I start seeing my float, I know I'm lifting my pole too high. Matrix 12 to 14 slick elastic through a 1.8 meter short kit. The short kits really will speed you up. They bring the fish up nice and close. You haven't got too much elastic through your pole, so the fish are going to start diving away everywhere. But yeah, that's my rigs. Really simple. 0.1 dibber, number 10 the whole way through, 4-inch hook length. Pretty simple stuff. If you can get into that process where you bait up, you feed, you go out, you flick 5 times, start feeding, start flicking, just fish nice and consistent. Flick your pole nice and consistently, set your rigs up like that. Start with pellets. If the weather's not quite right, fish with pellets. Start your matches with pellets when you're on venues like this. 4mm thin, perfect feed pellets. I'm sure you're going to catch a load of fish.